Welcome to Eternal Love Diaries, where real stories change real lives. Every love carries a story. And here, each one is told from the heart. Today's story follows James, a 38-year-old single father raising his 10-year-old daughter Lily after losing his wife to cancer 3 years ago. When he meets Emma, a talented photographer with emotional scars from her past, their connection is immediate but complicated. Emma's belief that her physical and emotional scars make her unlovable creates a wall between them that seems impossible to break through. As James tries to show Emma that true love sees beyond imperfections, a crisis with his daughter forces both of them to confront their deepest fears. What happens next will challenge everything they thought they knew about vulnerability, acceptance, and finding the courage to love again when the heart has been broken. The hospital waiting room felt like it was closing in on James as he paced back and forth, his phone clutched tightly in his hand. Lily's appendix had ruptured without warning during her school field trip, and now his 10-year-old daughter was in emergency surgery. He ran his fingers through his disheveled brown hair, the weight of being both mother and father crushing down on him in moments like these. 3 years as a single dad had taught him many things, but nothing prepared him for the helplessness of watching his child suffer. The surgeon had assured him the procedure was routine, but James couldn't shake the memory of another hospital room, another wait, another loss that had shattered his world. "Excuse me," a soft voice interrupted his spiraling thoughts. "Are you Lily Anderson's father?" James turned to see a woman holding a professional camera, her auburn hair pulled back in a loose ponytail. "I'm Emma Hayes. I was photographing the museum exhibit when Lily got sick. I rode in the ambulance with her while they tried reaching you." She extended a business card that read, "Emma Hayes Photography," with trembling fingers. She was so brave, kept telling jokes to the paramedics even though she was in pain. "She has your eyes." James felt a rush of gratitude wash over him as he took the card. "Thank you for staying with her. I was in a meeting across town and couldn't get here fast enough." He noticed Emma's kind green eyes and the way she seemed to understand his fear without him having to explain it. "Would you like some terrible waiting room coffee? Least I can do for the person who made sure my daughter wasn't alone." Emma hesitated, glancing at the exit as if calculating an escape route, before nodding slowly. Something about her reluctance intrigued him, a familiar caution he recognized from his own mirror. The coffee was indeed terrible, but the conversation flowed with surprising ease. Emma explained she was documenting the new children's science exhibit for the museum's website when she noticed Lily doubled over in pain. James learned Emma had moved to Portland just 6 months ago from Chicago to start fresh, though she carefully avoided explaining what she was starting fresh from. He found himself sharing stories about Lily's science obsession, her collection of rocks labeled in her messy handwriting, and how raising a daughter alone had taught him more about hair braiding than he ever thought possible. When the surgeon finally appeared with news that Lily's surgery had gone perfectly, Emma's genuine relief matched his own. "Mr. Anderson?" The nurse appeared at the waiting room entrance. "Lily's awake now and asking for you." James stood immediately, then turned back to Emma with unexpected reluctance to end their conversation. Before he could speak, Emma smiled and gathered her things. "Go be with your daughter. She needs you." She hesitated, then added, "I hope she recovers quickly." As she turned to leave, James called after her. "Would you mind if I called you? Just to let you know how Lily's doing?" The question surprised them both. Emma's expression shifted through several emotions before settling on cautious warmth. "I'd like that," she said, and disappeared through the hospital doors. 3 days later, James balanced a grocery bag on his hip while unlocking the front door of their modest craftsman home. Lily was recovering well but still needed rest, which meant his normally active daughter was growing increasingly bored and restless. He'd stopped by the bookstore to pick up new science magazines to keep her entertained. "Dad, did you get the ice cream?" Lily called from her nest of blankets on the living room couch. Her dark hair was tangled from sleep, but her color had returned to normal. "Rocky Road and those weird cheese puffs you like," he confirmed, setting the groceries down. And something else. He pulled out a small envelope. Someone sent you a get-well card. Lily tore open the envelope with excitement that quickly turned to wonder. Inside was a beautiful photograph of a butterfly emerging from its chrysalis, captured in stunning detail. The handwritten note read, "To Lily, sometimes the hardest changes make us stronger. Hope you're feeling better. Emma, the camera lady from the museum." Lily's eyes widened. "Dad, this is so cool. Can we thank her?" James smiled, remembering the 3 text conversations he'd had with Emma since the hospital. Each exchange had left him wanting to know more about the photographer with the guarded smile. "Actually, I was thinking maybe we could invite her for dinner once you're feeling better. To say thank you properly." Emma stood on their porch 2 weeks later, clutching a small gift bag and looking like she might change her mind at any moment. James opened the door before she could retreat, and the smile that spread across his face was entirely involuntary. "You came," he said simply. Emma nodded, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. "I brought Lily something." Inside the house, Lily's excitement at meeting her rescuer broke through any remaining awkwardness. The gift was a beginner's photography book with sticky notes marking pages about capturing images of insects and minerals. "Dad said you collect rocks. I thought maybe you'd like to photograph them too," Emma explained as Lily flipped through the pages with growing enthusiasm. Dinner was homemade lasagna that James had spent too much time perfecting, and conversation flowed more easily than he'd dared hope. Emma shared stories about photographing wildlife in national parks, carefully editing out personal details while Lily peppered her with questions. James noticed how Emma always positioned herself to keep her right side turned away, how she adjusted her scarf when it slipped, how her hand sometimes moved unconsciously to her neck and shoulder. He recognized the behavior of someone hiding something, not because he was particularly observant, but because grief had taught him to notice when others carried invisible burdens. "Dad makes the best chocolate chip cookies," Lily announced as James cleared the dinner plates. "He puts sea salt on top and everything." Emma laughed, the sound warming the kitchen. "Is that so? I'd love to try the famous Anderson cookies." James felt a flutter of something he hadn't experienced in years, the simple pleasure of impressing someone new. As he and Lily worked side by side preparing the cookie dough, he caught Emma watching them with a complex expression, longing mixed with something that looked almost like fear. When their eyes met, she quickly looked away, but not before James saw the shine of unshed tears. The evening ended with promises to meet again, and over the following weeks, Emma became a regular visitor to the Anderson home. She taught Lily photography basics during weekend outings to nearby parks, always returning with stories and images that captured moments James would have missed. He found himself looking forward to Emma's visits with an intensity that both thrilled and terrified him. They developed a routine of talking on the porch after Lily went to bed, conversations that stretched longer each time. Emma shared her passion for documenting overlooked beauty in ordinary places, while James confessed his struggles balancing work as an architectural engineer with single parenthood. "Sarah's been gone 3 years now," James said one evening as they sat on the porch swing, the summer air heavy with jasmine. "Sometimes I still reach for her in the middle of the night." Emma's hand found his in the darkness, a gesture of understanding rather than pity. "Does it get easier?" she asked quietly. James considered the question carefully. "Not easier. Different. The space she left doesn't shrink, but somehow life grows around it." Emma nodded, her profile illuminated by the porch light. "I'm afraid," she whispered, so softly he almost missed it. "Of what?" he asked, but she shook her head, withdrawing her hand. "It's getting late. I should go." The shift in their relationship happened gradually and then all at once. A brush of hands while washing dishes. Shared glances over Lily's excited chatter. The way Emma began to let her guard down around him, revealing her dry humor and fierce intelligence. James found himself thinking about her during work meetings, wondering what she would say about the building designs on his desk. When Lily announced that Emma was basically family now, James felt both joy and terror at how true the statement had become. He hadn't planned to fall in love again. He wasn't sure he even remembered how. Dad's birthday is next Saturday, Lily informed Emma during their photography session at the Rose Garden. We always have chocolate cake and watch old movies. You should come. Emma looked up from adjusting her camera lens, surprise evident on her face. Your dad might want that day just for the two of you. Lily shook her head with the certainty only a 10-year-old could muster. He smiles different when you're around. The real kind that reaches his eyes. Emma's hands stilled on her camera. Lily, your dad and I are just friends. Lily snapped a photo of a bumblebee with perfect focus. Mom used to say that sometimes grown-ups are the last to know what their hearts figured out ages ago. James's birthday dinner was intimate, just the three of them at his favorite Italian restaurant downtown. Emma had arrived with a carefully wrapped gift, a framed photograph she'd taken of James and Lily skipping stones at the river, their profiles caught in golden afternoon light. To remember the good days, she'd written on the card. The evening felt perfect until dessert arrived and Emma received a phone call that made her face drain of color. I have to go, she said abruptly, gathering her things. Family emergency. James offered to help, but Emma was already heading for the door, leaving confusion and concern in her wake. 3 days passed without word from Emma, her texts unanswered, her absence felt like a physical thing in their home. Lily's worried questions became harder to deflect. On the 4th day, James made a decision. With Emma's address from her business card and a container of soup, he drove across town to her apartment building. She might just need space, he told himself, even as he knocked on her door. When Emma finally opened it, her eyes were red-rimmed, and she wore a high-necked sweater despite the summer heat. James, she said, her voice hoarse. You shouldn't be here. I was worried, he said simply, holding up the soup container. Lily too. Emma's apartment was sparsely decorated but filled with her photographs, landscapes, close-ups of flowers, city scenes at dawn. No people, he noticed. No family photos. My mother had a stroke, she explained, accepting the soup with trembling hands. She's stable now, but it brought up complicated feelings. James nodded, sensing there was more she wasn't saying. Family can be complicated, he offered. Emma laughed without humor. The stroke affected the same side of her face as. She stopped abruptly. Thank you for the soup. Please tell Lily I'm sorry for disappearing. Emma, James said gently. Whatever you're carrying, whatever you're hiding, it doesn't change how I feel about you. The words hung between them, the first acknowledgement of the current that had been pulling them together for months. Emma's eyes filled with tears. You don't know what you're saying. James stepped closer, heart pounding. Then, but I never stopped feeling responsible for her death. Isabella reached for his hand. My grandmother made her choice. She believed in you enough to risk everything. Her eyes filled with tears. Just as I do now. That night, Isabella couldn't sleep. Her mind raced with revelations about her family, her grandmother, and the man who had unexpectedly captured her heart. Around midnight, she slipped out of bed and made her way to the kitchen for tea, only to find Alexander already there, nursing a steaming cup at the island counter. Couldn't sleep either, he asked, offering a gentle smile. She shook her head, taking the seat beside him. I keep thinking about my grandmother. I was only 10 when she died, but I remember how she used to tell me to follow the light in my heart, no matter what anyone said. Isabella's voice softened with memory. She was the only one who ever encouraged my art. She would be incredibly proud of you, Alexander said. You have her spirit, her courage and her vision. Tell me about her, Isabella requested. The real her, not the version my parents painted. Alexander's eyes lit up as he began to speak, sharing stories of Eleanor's brilliance, her infectious laugh, her determination to make the world better. She could walk into a room of skeptical investors and have them eating out of her hand within minutes. Not because she was manipulative, but because her passion was so genuine it was impossible to resist. "Like someone else I know," Isabella said softly, her eyes meeting his. The air between them changed, charged with unspoken feelings. Alexander reached out, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear, his touch lingering against her cheek. "Isabella, I never expected you. When your parents proposed this arrangement, I agreed because I thought it might be my chance to finally understand why they've hated me all these years. I never imagined that we would find each other," she finished for him. He nodded, vulnerability plain on his face. "I've been alone for so long. I convinced myself it was better that way." Isabella leaned forward, resting her forehead against his. "You're not alone anymore." Their first kiss was gentle, tentative, a question and an answer all at once. When they pulled apart, both were smiling through tears. The following morning brought a new challenge. Isabella's phone rang early, her younger sister Charlotte calling in distress. "Mom and Dad are furious," she whispered. "They're talking about legal action against Alexander. Something about patent infringement and stolen research. They've been meeting with lawyers for days." Isabella felt ice in her veins. "When?" "They're filing papers next week." "Isabella, they're saying terrible things about him, and about you. They're telling everyone you've been brainwashed." After hanging up, Isabella found Alexander in his office and relayed Charlotte's warning. His face hardened with resolve rather than fear. "I've been expecting this for years," he admitted. "But now I have something I didn't have before, the journal. Eleanor documented everything, including her will that named me co-owner of her intellectual property." He took Isabella's hands in his. "But fighting this will be ugly. Your family name will be dragged through the courts. Are you prepared for that?" Isabella squared her shoulders. "The truth matters more than reputation. My grandmother deserves justice, and so do you." What followed was a storm of legal battles, media speculation, and painful revelations. Isabella's parents launched their attack with vicious precision, painting Alexander as a manipulative thief who had now seduced their daughter to further cover his crimes. Old colleagues were paid to question his integrity, documents were selectively edited to support their claims. Through it all, Isabella stood firm beside Alexander, even as her family's smear campaign cost her friendships and professional connections. Her art was suddenly rejected from galleries that had previously courted her, invitations dried up, former mentors stopped returning her calls. The isolation would have broken her once, but now she found strength in purpose, and in Alexander's unwavering support. 3 months into the legal battle, Charlotte appeared at the mansion's door, suitcase in hand and tears streaming down her face. "I couldn't do it anymore," she sobbed as Isabella pulled her into a fierce hug. "I heard Dad on the phone with his lawyer. They know they're going to lose, so they're planning to destroy grandmother's journal, the original one in the family safe. They said they'd rather burn it than let Alexander win." That night, the three of them formulated a plan. Charlotte would return home, pretending her visit had been an attempt to talk sense into Isabella. Meanwhile, she would locate and secure the original journal before their parents could destroy it. "It's dangerous," Alexander warned. "If they catch you." Charlotte lifted her chin with determination that mirrored her sister's. "Grandmother always told me to stand for what's right, even when it's hard. I'm tired of living in fear of disappointing them." 2 tense days later, Charlotte succeeded. Using the family's annual charity gala as cover, she retrieved the journal from the safe and slipped away unnoticed. By morning, the document was safely in their lawyer's hands, and the case against Alexander began to crumble. The journal contained not only Eleanor's detailed records of her partnership with Alexander but also damning evidence of how her son had systematically erased her legacy after her death, claiming her patents as his own and building the family fortune on stolen innovations. When the truth finally emerged in court, the scandal rocked the art and technology worlds alike. Isabella's parents faced not only legal consequences but social ruin, the very fate they had tried to inflict on Alexander. Yet when the judge asked if he wanted to press additional charges, Alexander declined. "Enough families have been torn apart," he said quietly. "Eleanor wouldn't want more destruction in her name." In the aftermath, Isabella and Charlotte worked to rebuild their grandmother's legacy properly. They established the Eleanor Grant Foundation for Women in Science and Art, creating scholarships that bridged the two worlds their grandmother had loved. Alexander contributed his technical expertise and business connections, helping to secure patents that had been wrongfully attributed to others. 1 year after Isabella had first arrived at the mansion with her suitcase and her fear, she stood in the transformed East Wing Gallery, now open to the public for the Foundation's inaugural exhibition. Her newest paintings hung alongside historical photographs of Eleanor and her inventions, telling a story of innovation, betrayal, and ultimately, redemption. Alexander found her there after the guests had departed, gazing at a portrait she'd painted of her grandmother based on old photographs and Alexander's descriptions. "She would have adored you," he said, slipping his arm around Isabella's waist. "I wish I could have known her as you did," Isabella replied, leaning into his embrace. "In many ways, you do know her," he said. "Every time you stand your ground, every time you create something beautiful against all odds, that's Eleanor living on through you." Isabella turned in his arms, looking up at the man who had changed her life in ways she could never have imagined. "My family sent me here as a punishment," she whispered, echoing her words from that first day. Alexander smiled, touching his forehead to hers. "And I'm grateful every day that they did." That night, under a sky full of stars, Alexander led Isabella to the mansion's rooftop garden, a space he had secretly renovated over the past months. Fairy lights twinkled among the plants, and in the center stood a small table set for dinner. "What's all this?" Isabella asked, breathless at the beauty surrounding them. Alexander took her hands in his eyes reflecting the starlight. "1 year ago, you came into my life thinking you were being punished. You showed me that sometimes, what looks like an ending is actually a beginning." He lowered himself to one knee, producing a ring box from his pocket. "Isabella Grant, will you stay with me, not as a guest, not as a partner, but as my wife?" Tears of joy spilled down Isabella's cheeks as she nodded, unable to speak past the emotion tightening her throat. When he slipped the ring onto her finger, a unique design featuring her grandmother's favorite gemstone, she finally found her voice. "Yes," she whispered. 1,000 times, yes. What had begun as punishment had transformed into the greatest gift either could have imagined, proof that sometimes, life's harshest detours lead us exactly where we're meant to be. If this story touched your heart or reminded you of love's transformative power, please hit like and subscribe for more stories that celebrate second chances and unexpected joy. Your support helps us continue sharing these moments that remind us all that even in our most vulnerable hours, connection and hope can find us when we least expect it.